Welcome to my channel. Imagine a child who learns early on that the world won't wait for them, that they have to step into responsibilities far beyond their years. They carry emotions heavier than their small bodies were ever meant to hold. This experience shapes their mind, their identity, and their future in profound and often invisible ways. When a child grows up too fast, they're pushed into roles that adults should handle, whether it's caring for younger siblings, managing household tasks, interpreting the moods of unstable parents, or navigating chaos they never created. This child begins to see the world through a lens of survival rather than innocence. Childhood becomes a place they visit briefly, not a place they live in fully. In psychology, this is known as parentification. It happens when a child becomes the emotional or practical caretaker in the family. This role forces them to mature early. They become hyper-aware, hyper-responsible. They learn to monitor their environment for danger, read the emotional weather of the adults around them, and adapt quickly because adaptation becomes their shield. The child who grows up too fast becomes the little adult in the room. They speak carefully, act cautiously, and think constantly. Their young brain is shaped by stress and responsibility. And yet, they also develop strength, resilience, and a deep awareness. These traits stay with them into adulthood, creating a unique psychological profile that blends wisdom with exhaustion and strength with loneliness. When a child is forced to mature early, they often suppress their own needs, believing that needing anything makes them a burden. They learn to stay quiet, stay small, and stay helpful. They become the glue that holds everything together. Inside, they develop a core belief that love must be earned through usefulness, and that rest is not something they deserve. These beliefs follow them long after childhood ends. They become adults who apologize too much, help too much, and break down in silence because they never learned how to ask for help or how to feel safe leaning on someone else. The child who grows up too fast also develops something psychologists call emotional hypervigilance. This means they can sense the slightest shift in tone, expression, and tension in others. They learn to predict conflict before it happens and manage it before it explodes. This makes them wise beyond their years, and yet also tired beyond their years. It turns them into people who struggle to relax, because their nervous system is wired for constant alertness. Their mind can't simply trust that things will be okay. This early responsibility also affects their self-worth. They begin to believe their value comes from what they can fix and how much they can carry. If they ever stop carrying that weight, they fear they will no longer matter. This creates adults who overwork, overthink, and oversacrifice, giving pieces of themselves to everyone around them while rarely receiving anything in return. Growing up too fast also creates an adult who struggles with boundaries. They say yes when they should say no. They accept draining roles because boundaries were never an option in childhood. They learn that refusing responsibility brings guilt and conflict, and that being strong is the only way to keep things from falling apart. The psychology of a child who grows up too fast also reveals a deep internal conflict. These children are praised for their maturity and independence, yet inside they feel small, scared, and overwhelmed. This means they appear extremely strong and capable, yet they are emotionally isolated. They teach themselves how to cope, how to manage, how to survive. They grow into adults who rely heavily on self-discipline and internal rules. They judge themselves harshly because they believe mistakes are unacceptable. This self-pressure becomes exhausting and isolating, yet it feels normal because pressure was their first language and responsibility was their first identity. The child who grows up too fast also forms a complicated relationship with trust. They learned early that adults can be unpredictable or absent, so they grow into adults who hesitate to trust others. They keep people at a distance because relying on someone feels like giving them the power to hurt you. The irony is that these people are often extremely trustworthy themselves. They know the pain of being let down and refuse to inflict it on others. People around them may admire them without knowing the silent battles beneath the surface. These battles often include a deep fear of vulnerability. Vulnerability was never safe. Opening up can feel like stepping into danger. Allowing someone to see their true emotions feels like breaking a lifelong rule. And yet, they crave understanding, connection, and belonging. This tension becomes a defining emotional struggle in adulthood. The psychology of growing up too fast also affects ambition and self-expectation. These adults often push themselves constantly, striving for perfection because they learned early that they must perform to survive. Ambition becomes their armor, and achievement becomes their language of self-worth. Yet inside, they often feel like they are never enough. They fear failure with an intensity that others might not understand, because failure feels like losing control, and losing control feels like danger. So they fight endlessly to be perfect. This creates burnout, exhaustion, and emotional fatigue. The truth is, they were tired long before adulthood even began. This psychology also shapes relationships. These individuals are often drawn to roles where they must fix, help, or save others. They may be attracted to partners who need healing because caretaking feels familiar. They may avoid partners who offer stability because stability feels foreign and unsafe. They may struggle to accept love that doesn't require sacrifice because love without labor feels undeserved. They often feel uncomfortable being cared for because being cared for feels vulnerable, and vulnerable feels terrifying. This creates a pattern of unequal relationships where they often give far more than they receive. The psychology of these individuals also includes an inner child that remains frozen in time. This inner child carries sadness, longing, and unmet needs. This inner child wants rest, comfort, and someone to say it's okay to stop being strong. Adulthood becomes a journey of slowly rediscovering the parts of themselves they buried. The healing of someone who grew up too fast begins when they realize they are no longer responsible for everyone else. They begin to understand that they deserve care, rest, and love. They start to challenge the belief that their worth is tied to usefulness. They learn that it's okay to say no, okay to ask for help, and okay to be imperfect. They begin to give themselves what no one gave them as a child. This process is slow, emotional, and transformative. It requires them to learn trust, vulnerability, and self-compassion for the first time. It requires them to see themselves not as the fixer, but as a human being with needs and limits. In this healing, they discover a new identity beyond the survival role they carried for so long. They learn that they can rest without guilt, love without fear, and exist without constant performance. They reconnect with the childhood they lost by offering themselves the safety they never had. The psychology of a child who grew up too fast is not only about the pain they carry, but also about the extraordinary strength they developed. This is the quiet, resilient strength that comes from surviving what others never saw. They become adults with deep empathy, perception, and intuitive intelligence. They notice details others miss and understand feelings others avoid. But their true journey begins when they learn to direct that same empathy toward themselves and treat themselves with the tenderness they once needed. The psychology of the child who grew up too fast is the story of a mind shaped by responsibility, a heart shaped by deprivation, and a life shaped by survival. And yet, it is also the story of transformation, healing, and reclaiming the childhood that was taken learning to live, not just in survival mode, but in a state of presence, balance, and peace. If any of this resonates with you, know that you are not alone, and healing is possible. There are resources and communities available to support you. You can find links in the description below. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing for more content like this.